oddballs, welcome back to The Oddity Shop, where the bizarre is always on sale.
I am one of your two curators, Zach, sitting here with the other amazing curator, Kara. And this is the podcast where we tell you cursed, bizarre, haunted, animalistic, conspiracy, culty stories from around the world. I tried to change it.
I didn't know where you were going on that one.
You know what? In all honesty, I didn't either. How the hell are you?
I am fabulous. How about you?
Good. I'm sick of sitting on this surprise, and now that I have you as my captive audience, I am going to finally spoil it for you. I bought you two gifts weeks ago, and I haven't spoiled it.
How?
I know. I'm going to mute real quick so that I don't create a bunch of rustling, but give me a second.
Okay. The suspense is killing me.
You almost saw it for a second. Okay. So I got you a gift from each of the cryptid museums that I went to. So one from the Mothman and one actually wasn't from the Braxy Museum, but it was from a store across the street from it.
Oh.
Which one do you want to see first?
I don't care, you pick.
Okay, so across the street from the Braxy Museum was a little metaphysical store. And this girl gets a lot of so she sells metaphysical stuff, but there's an 83-year-old woman in town who makes cat greeting cards.
Oh my God, that's
and
precious.
Local artists and stuff. So this local artist has made Braxy stained glass.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful.
It's super iridescent. So it's or pearlescent, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's item number one. And then item number two.
What does it say?
It says
Shiny Honey.
Mothman statue, Shiny Heiny fan club, America's second most famous crack next to the Liberty Bell.
Oh my God, I love it so much. It's just a Shiny Heiny and huge lettering on it. That's awesome.
I was going to get you a way more fun,
that's so
cryptidy
funny.
one from there, but I saw the Shiny Heiny fan club, and as much as we talk about that shiny metal ass, it had to be that shirt.
That is so perfect. Oh, I love it. Well,
okay. So now I don't have to sit on the surprise anymore.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay, well, I am going to Washington soon, so to visit my brother. So you have to tell me what that store is called so I can get you your notebooks.
I'll have to look up to see if that I think it was just called the Left-Handed Store.
Oh.
I'll have to see if it still exists. It's been a solid 20 plus years since I've been there. So God only knows.
It probably hasn't existed since you left.
Yeah, it went out of business right after.
You were the last sale.
I stopped giving them business.
Oh,
yes.
Lord. All right. Well.
Also, I might have some write-in stories for us soon. One of my friends was visiting last week, Aubrey, and me and her were going back through all of our old stories. I'm like, you just need to write in. And because we beg people to write in and they don't, just submit each one under a different nickname so we can pretend it was a bunch of different people.
That works for me. We'll just make up names if we have to. I don't care.
Until y'all listeners out there start writing in the stories, we're all going to rely on Aubrey.
Shout out to Aubrey.
What else you got?
That's all I got. Let's jump in, baby.
Let's do it. Ask me what I have in the shop today.
What do you have in the shop today?
There you go. All right. To start, I have a question for you.
Imagine that a question. I never would have guessed.
What do plums, deformed animals, and Lyme disease all have in common?
Plums, deformed animals, and Lyme disease. Can you specify about the deformity?
Nope.
Should I know this?
I don't know. This is a test to see.
Plums, deformed animals, and Lyme disease? It's gonna be something I don't want to know about. I know it.
Probably uncomfortable at times, but I actually think this is one that you have never heard of.
Okay.
This was also a topic write-in from Julia.
Oh.
Thank you for this, because she grew up near where all this actually takes place. But
shout out Julia.
I'm not going to tell you what they all have in common to start. We're just going to let it happen throughout the episode. Are you ready?
Ask me again if I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to start in 2008. And in July of 2008, people are going about their business in Montauk, New York, when all of a sudden the day takes a little bit of a unique twist because a carcass washes up on a beach near the business district. Okay. So This part you're probably going to know.
Okay.
You're not going to know the ties to the rest.
Okay, because I was like, this sounds vaguely familiar.
This part will. So the beach where this thing washes up, it's a popular surfing spot, and Jenna Hewitt and her friends are doing beachy things when they discover the creature. An animal washing up on a beach isn't the weirdest thing ever, as we all know, but it's the way this thing looked. Some people said it looked like a raccoon, a pig, a turtle without its shell, which they're attached to, and a large rodent. Also, it had been compared to a dog. But people said it should have had hooves, but like a pig, but then it kind of had fingers, and the bones on its jaw just didn't match up to any type of animal, or like had long tufts of hair in some places, but no hair in other words. It's just
so we have no idea what
really
it is.
weird. Right.
Okay.
So if you want to see a picture of it, you can Google the Montauk Monster, which is probably where you've heard of this.
Yes. But
you can't make a whole episode out of it. Just that thing itself, because that's pretty much it. It gets washed up, it disappears. The news so Jenna takes a photo, and then she's interviewed by like a small local newscaster, and then it gets picked up online, right? So in that local station that she was interviewed for, she had this to say. We were looking for a place to sit and play ball games, and then this thing came out of nowhere. We didn't know what it was. We joked that it might be something from Plum Island. Does that ring any bells?
Plum Island. What is that from? Something?
Been mentioned in American Horror Story and Silence of the Lambs and a bunch of other pop culture, usually creepy things. So like I said, though, as it happens with strange animals, it goes all over online. But a lot of the locals were interested in what Jenna said, that one line about the creature being from Plum Island.
Okay.
So, have you heard?
I don't think so.
I had never heard of this. And Julia was the one who's like, have you looked into Plum Island yet? Like, you need to. It is wild. Okay. So, it's a 3 mile long and then at its widest, 1 mile wide, but it's kind of triangular shaped island.
Okay, so this is a real place.
It's a real island,
okay.
Yes. It's technically in Southold, New York. But basically, if you're looking at Long Island, the end tip of it, Plum Island is kind of just off of Long Island.
Okay.
It's about right halfway between there and Connecticut. So it's right in the Sound area. Okay. In the 1700s, it was Native American land. Of course, America, we go and take it.
Imagine that. In
the 1800s, a lighthouse was built on the island. And it was named Plum Island because there were wild plums that grew here. And that, with it being right in the middle of the Sound there, coming into Long Island Harbor, I don't know if that's its actual name, I just made that up, but the harbor of Long Island, the lighthouse helped ships, right? So in 1899, the entire island was purchased for $90,000 by the United States government, and a Coast Guard artillery post named Fort Terry was constructed there.
Okay.
So the fort was made active during times of war. Other times it was pretty inactive, but it was where they kept a lot of munitions, Coast Guard stuff to protect us in case anyone came for basically, New York City, Long Island, or our East Coast.
Okay.
After World War II, it's really not used again as Fort Terry. But in 1954, the United States Department of Agriculture, or as we all know, the USDA, takes up residence on the island because they're going to build a new research center.
Okay.
They're going to take parts of the old fort, and on Plum Island, they open the Animal Disease Center, or the PIADC, Plum Island Animal Disease Center.
Okay.
I'm going to just refer to it as PIADC for the rest of this because that's a mouthful. Its purpose, though, was to be a research facility dedicated to learning more about and studying infectious animal diseases that could affect the livestock, right? So if it had the potential of taking out entire herds, they were going to research it there to try to create vaccines or stop the spread. Pretty innocuous.
Okay.
Is that the right use of that word?
Sounded good to me.
Yeah. Okay. Innocuous, not harmful. All right, so on the Department of Homeland Security's website, here's what they say about the PIADC.
Okay.
Since 1954, the PIADC has served as the nation's premier defense against accidental or intentional introduction of transboundary animal diseases. Highly transmissible diseases of livestock and other animals, including foot and mouth disease and African swine fever, that can significantly affect food, security, trade, and the economy. These diseases are not transmissible between animals and humans. Fun fact, foot and mouth can be in some cases.
Yeah.
But, okay, so it was opened in 1954. It's given by the Army now to USDA to study mostly this foot and mouth disease with some of the others. The reason for foot and mouth, particularly, though, it's like it is horribly, horribly contagious and spreads really fast. So when there's outbreaks, they basically have to kill millions and millions of animals, even those unaffected, just to stop its spread.
Okay.
So from Wiki, it says that FMD has severe implications for animal farming. It's highly infectious, can be spread by infected animals easily through contact with not only the animal, but contaminated farming equipment, vehicles, clothing, feed, and by insects. So it's like, once it's in your area, you have to kill everything.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Is that still the case now?
Without their research, yes, it would still be a huge risk. And it's kind of like COVID, where every couple of years they have to make a new vaccine because it changes.
Strains and stuff, okay.
But when it happens, right, there's huge food shortages, cost goes up, billions of dollars are lost, and millions of animals are killed every time. Ooh, scary shit. Get the reason why we need it. In fact, like less than 10 years before this was opened, and probably the reason for its opening is there was a huge outbreak on the Mexico-US border, and like millions and millions and millions of animals had to be killed, and it created a food shortage. Okay, they're researching foot and mouth and other like super dangerous animal pathogens because they don't want to risk any outbreaks, right? Because they're dealing with like live virus.
Yeah.
They keep this island locked down. So you can only visit it if you're a worker or have a visitor pass, and there's a very limited number of passes. The entire island is patrolled by armed guards. The buildings have like countless security measures. You have to take a shower on your way in and out as a worker.
Oh, no way.
And it's like a sterilized shower, like intense chemicals. There's airlocks throughout the whole building. There are specialized holding tanks for the animals, an intense alarm system. Like this place, for being by the USDA, is like Fort Knox level lockdown.
That's crazy.
Okay, so why are we talking about it here, right? Because we are not an infectious disease podcast.
I don't know. I feel like we're mutating animals or something. This is going to make me sad.
Well, let's go back to our washed up Montauk Monster. Monsters. Because over the years, and on the shorelines of New York and Connecticut around the island, more than 5 animals have washed up that people could not correctly identify.
Yeah, I looked up pictures and I'm disturbed.
And like, they're all so gross. None of them look like anything you've ever seen before, and they all look like a mix of animals. Like sometimes they should have digits where there's hooves, or fins where there should be no fins on creatures, or like they're rotted but not rotted in the way you would think, and they're super waterlogged, so they just don't look right.
No.
And it looks, obviously, like you said, a little bit of maybe animal experimentation going on. So I mean, you're already working with viruses, right? So you have to have a good idea of how anatomy works and genetics and all those things. It's not a far jump, especially with how locked down this place was. And remember, if they have outbreaks, they need to be able to call all the animals. So incinerators for animals, lots of places to hide evidence all over these labs. Now, not only is there the the conspiracy of, animal genetic experiments going on, but also a lot of people think they're making creatures into biological weapons, like the fucking Hunger Games.
Well, I didn't know they did that in the Hunger Games, but okay.
Oh yeah, there's like a bunch of different animals. They call them mutts, that like they turn animals into like crazy genetic weapons, just killing machines. Okay, so this is all conjecture about the island. Obviously, the government's not going to be like, yeah, we were experimenting on animals. That's our body that washed up there. So everything that we're going to go through for the rest of this is connections that have been drawn or best guesses to prove these things. There is nothing that's going to give conclusive evidence about this place.
Okay.
And obviously the government and the USDA and Plum Island officials all are just in the camp of, oh, we're only working with pathogens here. Right, because we trust the government.
Right.
Okay, we've talked about the animals. Let's talk about a different creature that has washed up. And this is going to be just a real quick aside before we get into my main story, proving that this place is hideous as fuck. But there's just not much on this part. We've got the animals that have washed up. We've got, some thoughts about things maybe not being too ethical here. And in 2010, a body supposedly washed up on the shore of Plum Island.
Wait, it washed up on the shore of Plum Island. Okay.
On the shore. Now, this body was not animal. It was a human body.
Okay.
It was over 6 foot tall, a black gentleman with an extremely large build, very, very long fingers. His pants were inscribed with the words God Body Collection. No one knows what it means. And he didn't have any sign of trauma that would have led to his death.
God, what is it? Say it to me again.
God Body Collection.
I did not like that.
No. But this made people dig back into the other body that was found in 1971 that also had no trauma that led to its death.
Wait, that also washed up on their shore?
Yeah.
Okay.
And during the autopsy of this body, now mind you, there was no trauma from the outside, but as they got into the head cavity, there were 5 previously healed holes that were drilled into this person's head. Also had very long fingers and no fingerprints to ID.
This reminds me of the Men in Black, when she's doing the autopsy and there's like the little like pinhole.
Yeah. No, these are bore holes from 1971.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, that's just what it reminds me of. Ugh.
All right, so we've got the 5 critters that have washed up. We have at least 2 bodies that we know of. I'm sure these are only because the story got out, right? Everyone is kind of speculating here. Even Julia, who grew up near here, would say like, oh, don't go into those woods. You'll run into a creature from Plum Island. Or like if there was like a lot of foam on the water, they would be like, oh, this is from Plum Island.
Oh my God.
All the locals feel a certain way about this place. Let's go to World War II. Remember, Terry Fort was closed at the end of World War II, and that's kind of when this place started to open. But do you know who loved experimenting on animals and humans and genetics and biological weapons research?
The government?
The fucking Nazis, dude.
Well, that too.
After World War II, American and Soviet forces each create their own operation. America's was Operation Paperclip, and the Soviets called it Operation Mongoose. Because the Germans were defeated, remember, German technology was always like far above everyone else's. Mm-hmm. It was highly sought after. So the Soviets used Operation Mongoose to basically capture as many of the scientists as they could. The Americans, being a little bit nicer with Operation Paperclip, said, we can either kill you or you can come here. So we didn't just take them, we gave them a choice. But the USA take...
What a great choice.
Right? We take Eric Traub, the lead scientist on biological warfare, who reported to only one person between him and Hitler himself.
Oh my God.
And who had conducted tons of research and experiments on, 1, the genetics stuff, and 2, how to weaponize ticks and other biting insects.
Oh my God.
His whole thing, he was trying to figure out how you can take care of enemy troops without ever firing a gun. And what better way than unleashing deadly insects on them? Literally, that to me is the stuff of nightmares. I hate bugs. Ugh.
Yeah, I have no words for this.
So the rest of this is a lot of like a conspiracy board and the red yarn. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
So Traub gets sent to Fort Detrick. Fort Detrick is a place that is known as a biological weapon research facility. Okay. It's located in Maryland. So you've got Maryland, New York, Plum Island, then Connecticut. All pretty much right next to each other. Okay. He shows up, he's in America. He's doing work here before that first body ever even shows up, the one with the boreholes.
Yep.
Which is kind of a stretch there, right? Like, okay, maybe he was going from Fort Detrick to the island, doing some human experimentation, living up his good old glory days. But a lot of whistleblowers and rumor mills and everything seem to put that Traub was actually the entire time working on Plum Island. Because he was doing a lot of research there that they wanted to keep under wraps. Now, remember in Germany what insect he loved to work with?
What did you say, ticks?
Ticks.
Ugh.
Let's talk about Lyme disease for a minute. Do you know why it's called Lyme disease?
Oh, I do know, but you're going to have to remind me.
Because now, mind you, while Lyme disease has existed for longer than the PIADC, its biggest outbreak happened in Old Lyme, Connecticut.
Okay, yep.
So the disease, like I said, it's been around for forever, but in the 60s, it went from being really, really rare, especially in the States, to very common. In the 60s, it starts to, kind of become more prevalent. And in 1975, an epidemic of Lyme disease is hitting Connecticut hard. At first, kids start to get like rashes and swollen joints. Everyone starts to treat it as if it's the flu. They're getting worse and worse. And then people who are affected by it, like, you need medical treatment really quickly, or else it becomes a lifelong problem where you can get vision issues, paralysis, like problems with your eyes, almost bleeding. All sorts of joint arthritis. You can even become allergic to meat
and sauerkraut.
Okay, no, leave me alone. I'm not allergic to sauerkraut. I will continue eating it until I die. Okay. So like I said, though, this outbreak happens in Old Lyme, Connecticut, which is basically if you drew a line from Plum Island to the closest city you can hit across the sound where this outbreak happens. So I said nothing's conclusive. Right. But we have the signature body experimentation coming up here. We know Traub is 100% here and working on biological weapons and nearby. He loves ticks. And then a possible outbreak.
He loves ticks. He just loves them.
He was literally studying how to make them more contagious and like to affect people. So no proof, right? But a lot of conspiracy theorists and now me start to think that Lyme disease, at least in its highly prevalent stage, and the tick populations that have spread from the East Coast to the West Coast, like, have gone so extremely beyond what they should have that it seems like it came from the PIADC.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay. Obviously, the government officials shoot down any claims of this. There's been there's 2 books that were written on it. One that was called Bitten, about ticks. This guy he looks more at like the spread of ticks from the east to the west coast and how the population's taken off in ways they shouldn't have.
Okay.
The other one is Lab. It's called Lab 257.
Okay.
And that one is about a lab that was at Terry Fort, or Fort Terry, that was supposedly already a biological weapons research center that got pulled into the PIADC when they took over the fort.
Oh, interesting.
He also talks about how terribly they have, while all those safety measures are in place, there are hazardous leaks and outbreaks that happen all the time. Basically, animals on the island apparently just get out all the time and they have to just kill every animal on the island.
Oh my God.
Doesn't seem that far that, like, during one of those outbreaks, like a tick could have just made it to the mainland, or it wasn't accidental at all. And that was just like, hey, we're going to see what the hell happens. Which to me seems like something the government would do. We got the books that give proof. Obviously, the government's like, no. We have the DHS takeover. So in 2002, the Department of Homeland Security takes control of the island from the USDA.
No way.
Oh, yeah. Security way beefed up. And this is right before those animals start washing up.
Oh, before.
It was in the early 2000s.
Okay.
So I'm kind of thinking probably from like the 50s to like the 70s or 80s, it was more this biological research. And then like 80s, 90s, 2000s, they start doing all this crazy animal stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is what I'm putting together from what I could find.
Interesting.
In the 90s, the island faces huge fines for storing hazardous chemicals in unsafe conditions that they really shouldn't have even had.
Oh, wow.
There's at least 2 reported outbreaks of the workers getting sick or animals getting sick. And there's even further rumors that while they did have to kill all the animals, that was a lot of work and they got real hungry, so that the workers were eating and being fed the infected meat.
Oh.
Yeah.
What the
This
fuck?
place has, there's nothing we can draw, but there's something more than just the USDA protecting livestock happening on this island. So much so that, like, back after September 11th, remember how there was the big thing to like find Al-Qaeda informants, right? Multiple of them on their list had the PIADC as a possible place to attack, as like a huge national like weak spot.
Oh, that's weird.
It's an odd place.
Yeah. It's weird to have that on your list
if it was just like...
Right.
So for me, why would it be on the list if they were just keeping animals alive, right? Because to me, that would be like...
No.
Well, just no. If it's biological weapons research and human experimentation, I could definitely see why you would want to attack it.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on all of this so far? Because I just threw a ton of information.
I don't have any thoughts. My brain is done. It's melted away. my brain looks like the animals that washed up on the shore.
So do you think that the tick release was intentional or an accident?
I mean, that's hard to say because it really could go both ways. I could go both ways. Like, probably at one point it was going to be intentional. If this was an accident, it was definitely going to be intentional at one point, right? You know what I mean? So maybe this was like a test. I feel like I could see it being a test.
I kind of thought accident at first, right? Because it's not that hard for a tick to get off the island. When you look at this, it's really not far from shore. It actually looks like at points you can drive almost, if the tide is right, like to it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But then I started going down this other rabbit hole, and I don't have any of it well documented in my notes, but there is like countless times that the government has tested nerve gas on our own soldiers. And all these other research and like different types of harmful like chemicals on unknown people, and they do research. I mean, look at was it the Tuskegee Airmen, the syphilis?
Yeah, they
literally gave a bunch of black men syphilis and to just study what it does to the body. I mean, this was happening all over the country back then.
Yeah, I don't.
So
I guess I could see it. Yeah, like we just said, like it could be if it was an accident, it was definitely going to happen at some point, right? But I could also see it being like a practice thing, like a test. Like, let's let this happen and let's let it loose or whatever, and then let's see what happens, so that we kind of have better documentation out in the wild, like not a controlled environment, out in the wild.
And then now people think like whether it was accident or not, like, yes, we had ticks before. Yes, we had Lyme disease, but we don't have the population or like the severity of it now. And it's like completely just changed the way we interact with the world. But I do have, and I know you love them, a couple of Reddit comments.
Oh, give them to me.
Okay. So Weiser won 29 states. For those that don't know, Plum Island is a federal infectious disease research facility which allegedly developed tick-borne illnesses. A mysterious illness started in Lyme, Connecticut, which is just across the Long Island Sound. They called it Lyme disease, and it was eventually discovered it was tick-borne. Now, Bergdorfer, who the actual like virus is named after, the little bacteria, the guy who discovered it in Old Lyme.
Hold on. Can I just say that if you discovered a bacteria, would you really want it to be named after you?
I thought the same thing too. Now, I get it. Mind you, Lyme disease existed, but he's the one during this pandemic that figured out it was coming from ticks and what it was, right? Bergdorfer kind of downplayed the fact that he was also working in biological weapons.
Oh my Jesus Christ. What the fuck?
So the Weiser one goes on to say, the conspiracy is that the research ticks escaped, latched onto birds, and flew across the Sound to Lyme, Connecticut, in one of those accidentally on purposes exchanges to just gauge the effects. Then I found one on the animals. So Moya posts, in July 2008, the carcass of an animal washed up on the beach in Montauk's Point, Long Island. Local beachgoers are used to seeing dead animals, seagulls, fish, crabs, even the occasional whale, but they had never seen anything like this. Animal experts were actually brought in to identify it. They were stumped. It looked part dog, part reptile, part rodent with the beak of a bird. This animal, whatever it was, became known as the Montauk Monster. But where did it come from? All the locals knew it could only be one answer. Plum Island. Plum Island is just a few miles from where the monster was found, and locals had heard rumors for years that it was a top secret government facility that created bioweapons, engineered animal hybrids, and maybe even experimented on people. Sounds like a wild theory, but when bodies start washing up along with animals, it seems very real. We call it New York's own Area 51.
Oh my God. That's crazy.
Yeah. One last one for you. Matt Alive is the guy who pulled this one. And he says, I mean, the Nazi scientist worked there. He headed up a few different programs. He was injecting fleas with bioweapons for the Nazis long before he came to America. So the fact that a new disease popped up right across from the bay that involves something that came from ticks is just flat out not a coincidence. Lyme, Connecticut is right across the bay from Plum Island. Lyme, Connecticut is the reason why Lyme disease is called Lyme disease. There is so much more to the story than this. These are just a few simple facts, but if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, look up African swine fever.
Oh, God, no. I can't do it right now.
That one I couldn't even get into. It's a whole nother episode on its own, but basically African swine fever that was let out in Cuba that killed huge amounts of the population there, pretty much has the same ties back to Traub.
Oh my God.
Now, the reason it's so under wraps, though, is because Nixon had put a stop to all this research about 2 years before all these things started to come out.
Jesus Christ.
So this was happening like underneath even regular government shit. Okay. We're never going to know what happened here. You can believe it was all done to protect livestock. I'm going with the conspiracy theorists on this one. Like, I believe human and animals are being experimented on, trying to create super weapons. I believe they were probably also making vaccines for these diseases, but it's just too fucking weird.
Yeah. And I think like the bodies washing up on the island just makes me think that they did not wash up on the island. They're just reported like, oh my God, we found these bodies on the island. They were trying to like...
I meant to say that too. Like, oh yeah, these just wash up here. They're not from us. No
fucking way. That was really dumb. Why didn't they just like... I
don't know. And here's the thing though, that like, thankfully I found this last bit of information, because what was really terrifying is like, this place is so close to New York City. If other outbreaks happen or one of these animals gets out, like,
right.
If New York City is ground zero for one of these viruses, like a epidemic starting, how do you control it? How do you stop it? It'll be around the world before we even know what's happening.
Yep.
So thank God in 2020, they made the decision to shut the island down and sell it. It took a while, but at the end of 2023, they finally shut it down and moved it to Manhattan, Kansas.
Okay.
Which I think is funny. They moved it from like next to New York to Manhattan, Kansas.
Is it like any better? Like,
not really. So then this, okay. Do you have anything more you want to comment on this before I just go down my last little rabbit hole?
I don't think so.
Okay. And literally, I know it was all over the place. There are so many conspiracies. Like, dig into this place. It is wild. But what this sent me down was because, like, okay, how does an animal disease center, like an outbreak, even happen?
Yeah.
You know? So I guess the couple outbreaks that did happen were human error, people being careless, and it escapes the lab that they're working in.
Yeah, the controlled area.
Dude. Okay. So let's talk about two other locations, the NIH and the CDC. So the National Institute for Health and the Center for Disease Control, which are locked down tighter than this place ever was.
Yeah.
Have leaks all the fucking time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So one of those, like, one of the, like, the biggest safety things you have in viral labs like this is if there's an outbreak or an exposure, like something is let out into the air that shouldn't be. The CDC has all these scrubbers that like pull tons of outside air in and just blast it through. And then they take all the contaminated air and filter it.
Yeah. Okay.
For years, one of those was backwards. So if there was ever an outbreak, it would take all the contaminated air and just blow it out.
For how many years?
It was like that for a couple of years. Now, thankfully, they say there was no actual outbreaks in that building. But, okay. Then,
oh my God,
they found in parts of the NIH, an old, like, decommissioned part of the building that had an old refrigerator that wasn't being run anymore. Inside of it were samples of anthrax. So, like, if the CDC and the NIH can't even keep their shit together... And these are just the things we know about, like that people got from Freedom of Information. There is so much more that we don't. Half of me is glad we got the PIADC away from New York and put it in Kansas. But like all these places that the CDC's in Atlanta, like all these other places are also like inland. So if these things get out, I don't know. I feel like we are just messing with so many ticking time bombs.
Well, yeah, we are.
We're only mere minutes away from
death.
Oh my God. What is the umbrella? Resident Evil. Like as I'm watching all this, I'm just picturing all those like Resident Evil scenes all the time.
Yeah. This is one of those episodes where I just don't have words.
There's no words and it goes all over the place. I'm sorry. I know it wasn't that organized, but there's just so many little things. No, I think it was very organized.
It's just... It's hard for me to comment on stuff that is so, like, terrifying. I mean, a lot of things that we talk about are terrifying, but this is one of those things where it's, like, it's inevitable. Yeah. Like you said, there's so many ticking time bombs. It's just, it's not of... We're
only, like, I mean, it's not a if, it's a when we hit something that looks even worse than 2020 did.
Oh, God, no.
So anyways, long story short, the moral of this at the very end of the day is just make sure you wear tick spray.
Oh, God.
And check your friends for ticks.
All right, I'll check you. You check me.
Fair. Are we going to do it right now? Should we start stripping on camera?
Yeah, they would love it. Good job, dude.
Mhm.
Thanks for making me not sleep tonight.
Yeah, new fears unlocked, new rabbit holes to go down.
Yep.
Dive in.
Nope.
Too, because every article I would find on Plum Island had like
Something
some of them
different.
wouldn't even mention like all these other things. There's
just like a lot more.
There's just so many. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Plum Island, man. Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of that one. I've heard of the Montauk Monster, but I've never heard of...
And I've looked into it too, and I've thought about doing an episode, but it's like there's just not enough there. They found a monster, it disappeared. But yeah, no.
Yeah, so what happened to the carcass? Who took it? Do you know?
There's arguments that it washed away, that somebody came and took it, or that people just don't really know. It's one of those things where I feel like Jenna and her friends kind of took the picture of it and then didn't care about it anymore, and then it blew up afterwards.
And then the bodies, do we know who those were? They're unidentified completely.
Unidentified.
Interesting. Yeah, that's like disturbing. So,
and according to the government, never existed either. But the thing is there's so many different people accounting these things, like that used to work there or this or that like it's a government research facility. There's shit going on.
Oh yeah, we don't even. Duh. Wow. Okay. Well, good job, dude. Hopefully everyone else can sleep tonight, because I don't know if I can after hearing all of this. But we appreciate you for telling us these wonderful...
Ooh, leave a little creepy crawly bug emoji on our most recent post.
Oh, is there a tick emoji?
I don't think so, but a spider will work, and I'm sure there's
just leave a bug.
And I'm gonna regret that later.
Pick a bug. Pick one, any bug. All right.
Also, make sure you write in and tell us your stories, and if you have been enjoying it, we would love some reviews on Spotify and Apple. You know, if you're liking it, other people might too, and they won't know unless people write nice things about me.
Well, that too. Also, just share with a couple of friends, family members, tell them to listen. If you're friends with them, I'm sure they like what you like, so they might like this. Yeah, so leave your bug emoji. Have a wonderful day, night, whenever it is that you're listening to this. We love and appreciate you.
And how are we closing out the shop?
Most importantly, creep it real, yeah, balls.
Goodbye.
Bye.